I just wanted to talk a little bit about something some of you guys are missing a little bit, which is the strength of the relationship throughout the range and any weaknesses you have in your data. So if we take a look at these two graphs just as examples, one thing that a lot of people have noticed on the Honda cars is that there's a lot of data between, like 10,000 and 90,000 kilometers, and then afterwards there's not much. And some people are calling that outliers, but in reality, I mean, these are cars that have driven 120 and 130 kilometers, and they were each sold at $10,000. And so what we have out at the end here is not much data, which in context is not many cars. So it's not so much that my relationship becomes weaker out here, or that these are outliers. I mean, you can talk about them as outliers, but in the strength of the relationship, what happens out here is less confident, maybe, in predictions and things like that, because I don't have a lot of other values or other cars that have been sold to, to kind of base my prediction on, or to back my prediction up to say that, this seems reasonable because I see there's 15 other cars with similar distances that have been sold at similar prices. Where here we only have the two cars. So we can talk about being less confident in that area because we have less data to help back us up. And that, this area here, so this is what we would call being a strength or weakness, that between those 10 and 90, this is a stronger part of the data to be predicting and basing the model on because I've got more values to look at. I've got more cars to look at. And outside of that, this is the part where there's a little bit of a weakness in my model. My model is weaker out here, not so much because its strength is weaker, but weakness in terms of my confidence is a lot lower. I'm not as confident in any predictions that I make for those values because I'm not sure. I mean, maybe cars actually do sell for a lot less with high kilometers, but I don't have the evidence to back that up. And same with talking about life expectancy at birth. A couple of weaknesses in the data here is that you notice there's a gap. You don't have any countries around, 15,000 GDP per capita. And so, that means that if I'm predicting into this gap, I'm not as confident because I don't have other data points to go off of. And same out here, not so much that those are outliers, they're just countries with unusually high GDP per capita. And so for countries with really high GDP per capita, I'm not as confident about my prediction because I've got less of them out there to look at. But again, because of life expectancy, I guess in this context, we wouldn't really expect life expectancy to change much. It's that idea that, a tiny increase in GDP here makes a big increase in the life expectancy, and a tiny increase in GDP here does nothing for the life expectancy. It doesn't really bring it up at all. So those are things you can talk about. And some people were trying to look at the fit of their trend line on this graph, and it can be quite hard to look at when you've got a small, tiny graph. So just some tricks for you. If you have your Excel, you can just try and drag it and make it look really big. Another thing you can do is if you right-click on it, you should be able to move chart and put it into a new sheet, and it will make it really big for you. Now you can't actually see that on my video, unfortunately. So we'll go back to the other one. Oh. We'll make this work. Anyways, if you fight with it for a little while, you get it in a new sheet, and if you right-click on your point, you're going to add your trend line. And let's see what we want to put on here. Probably logarithmic. You can kind of see the data a little bit better. So if you zoom your graph in, you can see things. And so don't be afraid to, really just start breaking your window out and making it bigger and bigger and bigger until you can see a little bit better what's going on. So sometimes you might have copied and pasted a tiny little graph, and that might be hard to read off of. So don't be afraid to go back to Excel and make a really big one that you can see all the detail on. So again, same idea on this graph. It would be weaker in here because I don't have any countries with similar GDP per capita in there. And I'm not as confident out here, although it shouldn't make much of a difference because at some point life expectancy really can't get any bigger than 80. So those are the points to think about. When you're talking about strengths or weaknesses in your data, looking for gaps or looking for areas where you don't have as much data. And again, it's not that it's rubbish or that it's a weak relationship, it's just making you less confident in any of the predictions that you would make on that area, in that area without as much data.